Why, hello there, and welcome back to the series of videos on reproduction in humans. In this video, we'll be continuing with the painful topic of the menstrual cycle. Painful in more ways than one. But before that, we'll also do a bit on puberty, because puberty is when the menstrual cycle begins to take place in females. So here are the learning objectives: what is puberty and what happens during the menstrual cycle. So you'll also find this in your textbook. Just look for menstrual cycle. Right, so what is puberty? I'm sure all of you are experts because you have had personal experience of it. Well, it is a time when secondary sexual characteristics begin to emerge. So for example, in females, you get things like breast growth. In males, you get things like your pubic hair, facial hair, and your voice deepening. Now, changes also occur in sexual organs. For example, in males, they start producing sperm, and females will start experiencing menstruation and ovulation as part of their menstrual cycle. Now, what is this secondary sexual characteristics? Well, very briefly, if you think about what makes boys and girls different, you'll be able to list out some characteristics that make males different from females. Now, there are primary sexual characteristics and secondary sexual characteristics. The primary ones are those to do with anything to do with sex organs, and they're usually present from birth. So the fact that males have testes and a penis, and the fact that females have a vagina, these are all primary sexual characteristics. Secondary sexual characteristics have to do with other parts of the body and usually emerge during puberty. So for example, the voice of a boy deepening, that's nothing to do with sexual organs, and it only emerges at puberty. Or another example would be enlargement of breast growth in females. Alright, so just handy to know that difference. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for puberty, and I'm going to leave you guys to read up the rest of puberty by yourself. So for example, what age does it take place? What are some other changes that take place? You can find it all on this page of your textbook. Now we're going to move on next to the menstrual cycle. So here's a very simple guess the word game. Here is a picture, a diagram of the menstrual cycle. Now what do these two pictures have in common? Hopefully you can guess the 5-letter word. It is cycle. Right? So the menstrual cycle is a cycle. It's a cycle of events. Now you have already learned about the menstrual cycle in back in Sec 2 in your lower secondary years. So I wonder, what do you remember about it? It's really helpful now to just pause for a while, look at these questions and think about what you remember. And we'll start the video again once you're ready. Okay, so what is the menstrual cycle? Well, it's basically a cycle, a cycle of events. How long is this cycle? So every cycle, how long does it take? On average, around a month. I hope you can remember the magic number. It takes an average, a length of 28 days on average. And what are the two key events which take place in the menstrual cycle? And on which days? Now hopefully you start to recall some of it. The first key event is menstruation, right? That's when there's bleeding, shedding of the uterine lining. That happens on day 1 of the menstrual cycle. And hopefully you also can remember ovulation. That's when the egg is released from the ovary. That happens on day 14, usually, of the menstrual cycle. So the menstrual cycle is an alternation of these two main events, which means menstruation happens, then ovulation, and then menstruation again, then ovulation, and so on. Now, is the menstrual cycle always 28 days long? We say that, it's on average 28 days long. Well, the answer is, if you ask any of your female friends, probably not. Alright, so there is a certain natural variation in the menstrual cycle length. Right? Sometimes the menstrual cycle is longer, 35 days even. Sometimes it's shorter, 25 days. Now, why is this variation present? Well, there can be a variety of reasons. You ask your female friends. Sometimes it's caused by changes in diet, stress, maybe falling sick, not getting enough sleep. All this can affect the menstrual cycle's length. So the important point is that there is natural variation, but on average, right, the menstrual cycle is usually 28 days long. Okay, so what happens during the menstrual cycle? Well, we're going to take a look first at the big picture, right? The different stages of the menstrual cycle. And in the next video, we're going to take a closer look at each stage. So let's start with the big picture. Now, the first stage of the menstrual cycle is known as the menstrual flow stage. It's day 1 to 5. That's when menstruation happens. It's when you have cramps and there's blood everywhere and it's painful. Right, that's when your uterine lining in the uterus is being broken down and shed from the body. And the next stage after that is called the follicle stage, from day 6 all the way to day 13. Right, so this diagram is a bit wrong actually. It should end at about day 13. This is the follicle stage, and this is actually when the uterine lining starts to be repaired and starts to thicken again. So there's also the important role of estrogen being produced, causing the uterine lining to be repaired. And it's called the follicle stage because you'll see in the next video, that's when the follicles in the ovary start to develop, and the follicles are going to eventually release the egg. So it's developing, and the follicle stage ends when you have ovulation, right? And that happens on day 14. That's when an egg is released from the ovary into the fallopian tubes. So day 14, big day, important day, big event, important event, ovulation. Now after the ovulation, you have the corpus luteum stage. That's the rest of the menstrual cycle from day 15 to day 28. It's called the corpus luteum stage because after the egg is released from the ovary, there is something left in the ovary which is called the corpus luteum. Okay, we'll look at it more in the next video. Now, also very importantly, during this stage, the uterine lining is being maintained, its thickness is being maintained by a hormone called progesterone. Right, so during this stage is when there's a high level of progesterone. It helps to maintain the uterine lining. Okay, so that's the big picture of the menstrual cycle. And in the next video, we're going to go deeper into each stage. So I'll see you there.